Hi everyone, my name is Jo and I work for Space to Breathe. And in today's Shhh, we're going to be thinking about the topic of feeding ourselves well. Dorothy Day said, "Food for the body is not enough, there must be food for the soul." And when we think about feeding ourselves well, we're thinking about it from the point of feeding ourselves nutritionally well, but also feeding our souls well in the ways that we care for our well-being. This week we are continuing our Wellbeing and Resilience series by thinking about the benefits of nutrition for our well-being. But to kick us off, we're just going to start this shush thinking more holistically about how we feed our minds, our bodies and our souls in order to be well. To start off with, I just want you to take some time to pause, to slow down. Make yourself comfortable wherever you're sitting. Take some slow, deep breaths. Allow your body to calm, to slow, to become aware of what is going on in your body, of the thoughts and emotions of the day. Allow those things to settle. And to start us off today with our meditation, I wanted to get you to think about the last thing that you ate. Mindful eating has become something that's been talked about in a lot of recent studies about being present as we eat and present to what we're eating. And so I just want you to think back to what you last ate today. Why did you eat it? Perhaps you were hungry. Perhaps it was mealtime. Perhaps you saw something tasty and really wanted it. Perhaps you needed some comfort. How did you feel as you ate it? Did you enjoy eating it? Was it delicious? Did it taste good? Was it just a practical sense of needing to eat? How did it make you feel? Are there any tastes that linger? What was the most enjoyable thing about it? Was there something you didn't like about it? How did that experience of eating make you feel? And how do you feel now as a result of having eaten whatever you chose to eat? Today, as we think about mindful eating, as we think about nourishing our bodies and feeding our minds, bodies and souls well, I'm going to go back to a plant. I feel like this is often what I do in shushes. This Space to Breathe, in the height of lockdown, I ordered some fruit bushes, as I think probably a lot of people did in the height of lockdown. But because the UK had gone en masse crazy on gardening, I wasn't able to get the right kind of compost. Blueberry plants need ericaceous compost because they are lime-hating plants, and it helps to keep the soil in the right condition for the blueberry plant to grow and flourish. So last year I just planted it because it needed planting in normal compost in a pot smaller than it needed. But this year I've been able to get hold of the right compost, and I was able to move my blueberry bush into the right size pot with the right kind of compost in order that hopefully I will get a beautiful blueberry crop later this year or next year. And as I was thinking about the blueberry plant, it's not just enough for me to have potted it on into the right place. It needs to be fed, and it needs to be fed the right food at the right time. And I think the same can be said for us when we think both about our nutrition and our sense of well-being and what we're feeding ourselves for our well-being. So let's break that down a little bit. And I want to start with the question, what are you feeding yourself? If we think about that nutritionally, this week on our social media, we're going to be kind of sharing some ideas and thoughts and encouragements of what can help our well-being in terms of what we physically eat, what nutrition we're putting into our bodies, things like practices where there have been lots of bodies of research around how it can be helpful to eat within a 10 to 12 hour window. which leaves our brains and our gut and the rest of our bodies a kind of 12 to 14 hour window in which to properly digest our food, to slow down and not be continuing to trying to digest food in times when it should be resting. But when we talk about well-being, there's also a thing about, are you feeding your body the right things in order to flourish? I have just, I'm in the midst of a sugar detox, I guess, for want of a better word, an 8-week program which weans me off sugar, has a few completely sugar-free weeks, and then weans sugar back into my life. I've chosen to do it because my relationship with sugar has not been a healthy one. But I think for me, one of the most surprising things for me during the process so far has been the things that's bubbled up about my general kind of how I treat my well-being. So within that, kind of often I would go to food as a treat. It would be the thing that I would think, oh, I've had a really tough day and I'm just going to have a chocolate bar because I need to kind of treat myself. Or, oh, I did really well today, I'll give myself a really nice chocolate bar, a glass of gin or something as a reward. But actually it's caused me to come back to that thing of what is a treat for me, what is a treat for my body, how do I invest in my flourishing and my well-being through treating myself. And it's really caused me to hold that thing of a treat and to say, what do I define as a treat? And so one of the things I've thought about in that process is actually after a really long hard day, I really love sitting in a hot bath reading a book, and so that's better for my well-being in many ways than reaching for a chocolate bar. By having a relaxing bath, it kind of slows my body down and my mind down and allows me to prepare to go to sleep really well. It kind of decreases the stress in my body, alleviates those stress kind of hormones that are buzzing through me, physically slows me down, which again helps those kind of symptoms of stress to just ease. And we all know that when we sleep well, we are often in a better mood. It alleviates the things of stress and tiredness, and it can be a real boost to our bodies. So choosing to take a bath as a treat over choosing to eat a chocolate bar is both I think there's a spectrum, I guess, of well-being in terms of what we put into our bodies and also what we choose to do for our well-being that are really closely linked. The question I'd like you to reflect on now for a couple of minutes is, are you feeding yourself what you need for your well-being? And that could be nutritionally, but it could also be practically. How do you be well and how do you help yourself to flourish? What are these things? And the second question I want us to reflect on today is, are you feeding yourself at the right time? When we think about that nutritionally, it's about learning to listen to our hunger cues. If you're hungry, eat. If you are more mindfully eating, you'll be aware of when your body is full and more likely to stop. When we think about it in the sense of our well-being, it's thinking about not getting to the point of burnout before we stop and do things that will help our bodies and our minds and our souls to be well. It's doing those things day to day that we know will enable us to flourish, to maintain our sense of well-being, to foster that resilience that we've been thinking about over these last few weeks. So don't wait until burnout. Are you feeding yourselves what you need today? You've just thought about what that food is that we need to be well. Think back over the last week. Have you made space and time in the last week to be feeding yourself well? Is there space over the next week where you can do some of those things you just thought about in order to be well, to maintain a sense of flourishing? And if you are feeling burnt out, overwhelmed and exhausted, make time to stop. When we're hungry, we eat to give ourselves energy to continue on with what our day holds. If we're burnt out, we need to stop and we need to take stock and we need to feed ourselves with things that will allow our bodies, our minds, our souls, our spirits to flourish, to enable us to do life well. So just hold that question for a few minutes now. Are you feeding yourself the things that make you well on a daily, weekly, regular basis in order to flourish? Finally, I want to touch on the idea of mindful eating that I referred to back at the beginning of this meditation. Feeding yourself the right food and at the right time are two really important parts of mindful eating. But another thing that I just wanted to touch on was the idea of being present. So in terms of mindful eating, that looks like not kind of being on your phone whilst you're eating, not watching TV whilst you're eating, but being really present in the moment, thinking about the food that you're eating, enjoying the food that you're eating, noticing the sensations of the food, the taste of the food, how you feel. I guess some of the things that I got you to think about in that exercise at the beginning. It can also be about eating with others and being really present with those that you are eating a meal with. And then there's something about that we can also take into our wellbeing activity. So for me, going for a walk is a really helpful way for me to look after my well-being. And within that, like, it can be really easy on a walk to think, oh, I've just got a window of time, I'll just text this person, or I'll just add this thing to my to-do list, or oh look, that's pretty, I'll just stop and take that photo, or just to become like really distracted by lots of other things. But actually, if I'm really intentionally trying to look after my well-being, it involves putting my phone in my pocket and really focusing. And the things within that I notice are the daffodils shooting up, the snowdrops, the bumblebees that are starting to appear, the sound of the birds. There's something really important about being present in the moment, like mindfully nourishing our bodies, as we think about how we look after our well-being. So as you start to put into practice this week, or continue to practice this week, some of those things that you know nourish your mind, body and soul really well, practice being mindful. Perhaps as you eat this week, maybe try it as you're eating and see how you find it, noticing those sensations, noticing how you feel before you eat and after you eat. It can be a really helpful practice to build into not only our kind of wellbeing activities, but also our physical eating as well. We'd love to hear how you get on with it. We hope you're all keeping safe and well.